And here we go. It's time for Bill to share his part. So I'll give you Bill with 40 years clean from Pennsylvania.
I'm an addict on Bill, and I'm going to open up with Samantha's questions, okay? All right, because they're important. All right, they're important how we developed that through the 80s. I think that got set up when I first got clean in 1979. There was a guy on here earlier. He was up in the corner there named Pete B, who was a good friend of mine early in recovery, okay? It's one of, he wasn't my best friend back then. We traveled a lot together. But the thing that excited me when I first come here, I want an exciting story, okay? I want to, talk about, and I'm going to go through controversial stuff, of course, because if I'm going to talk, there's going to be controversy that goes along with it. But the most beautiful thing that happened in Narcotics Anonymous when I walked through the door is there was a literature movement going on. And if you were not part of that there, I think it's the most exciting time in Narcotics Anonymous history. And Bo shared about going out to Frisco, talking about the basic text, and talking with Greg, who became my second real NA sponsor, okay? And I met my first NA sponsor through the literature movement named Joseph Proctor. All right, and Joseph probably impacted me more than any man in my life ever could. Joseph was totally different than me. That's the first thing I want to get straightforward. He was a soft-spoken, loving, caring, compassionate human being that could rub me down better than any woman ever did. And he drew out this angry human being that lived inside of me, and got me involved. Joseph used to say, go to the next NA function there was. There weren't many NA functions back then. At a world convention, you had an East Coast convention. There were a couple more conventions started up after that. But there were literature conferences, literature meetings, service meetings, okay, that we went to. We hung out together. Bo talked about, staying up all night, whatever. That was normal back then. That was normal back then, to go to a meeting and then go to another meeting and stay up all night and drink coffee, watch the sun come up, and then just stay up. But when you heard Bo talking about the chemicals he did, well, there are a lot of us chemical freaks like that back then. That, the excitement, though, running on adrenaline. We ran on adrenaline back then. The excitement that these people brought to us about writing a basic text. This is our first ever written material outside the little white book and the 5 IPs before that. This is the first ever comprehensive book ever written on Narcotics Anonymous for addicts by addicts. It's called The Gray Book. It's an original. Like I said, it was my sponsor, Joseph Proctor's book. And it's important to me that this book is what I study today. I love this more than the basic text because this has addict language in it. And I'm going to get to that as I share along here, because what happened throughout getting involved in service, and people say, oh, I'm doing too much. What are you doing? Oh, I sponsor 2 guys. I'm a GSR. I go to the H&I committee. Well, back then, I served the home group. I served the area. I served the region. And I went to World Services. And then I ended up being on 5 world committees at one time. Seriously, it's just like Joseph said, never say no. So I never said no. And I took that literally when he said, don't say no. I said, okay, what else am I going to do? We all get here one way or another. I got here in desperation. I didn't want to live anymore. And I'm not going to go over my end of my addiction or nothing like that, but I didn't want to live, and I ended up here by God bringing me here. I didn't bring myself here to Narcotics Anonymous. God did. And so I was so grateful. The first time I ever spoke was 90 days clean. And I call them, He's not my first real NA sponsor, but he was my sponsor because he did the dual fellowship stuff. And he relapsed at a year clean. But him and his wife and this other guy, who were the elder members of our group back then with, 8-9 month clean, took me to a high school to speak with them. And they said, you're going to get up there for about 2 minutes, Bill. Don't worry. He says, John, this one guy, John's going to get up, and then his wife's going to get up, and then he's going to get up. He's going to leave 2 minutes for me at the end. John got up and froze. He said, I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I'm in narcotics, and that was the end of him. And then his wife got up, and she smoked 2 minutes. And then he got up, and he froze. And now you got an auditorium of over 1,000 kids sitting in front of me. And John said, my sponsor's name was John too. So John too sent me up there, and he said, and I looked out over the crowd, and I realized, where would have I been sitting when I was in 9th grade? I'd have been the kid in the back row. I'd have been the guy pulling the girl's bra strap. Okay, I'd have been the guy shooting spitballs. I'd have been the guy in the principal's office. So I realized, so I start talking to them people and told them, please sit up, because I know who you are. You're me. And I spoke for about 45 minutes, and then the room erupted, and I was just like, holy shit. And then the principal pulled us aside and says he wanted to give me a blank check. He said he had cervical in the week before, and he said, you blew cervical away. And I'm like, get me out of here. My head's blowing up. And then they said, now, can you stay for another period? Because if the kids want to talk to you, and then you had about 50 kids come in to talk to us personally. And I'm listening to some of these stories of some of these kids. And I'm hearing about the sexual abuse in their homes, and they're talking about me. And I'm realizing that I was supposed to carry a message of hope and promise of freedom from that point forward. My life had ended, and it was time for me to help others. And then I got involved in the literature movement. Anyone that knew Larry North, I spent a lot of time in the back of his van, crisscrossing places. I spent a lot of time with Joseph. I went to the World Convention in Miami. I went to the Second East Coast Convention, got excited about this thing called Narcotics Anonymous, got involved in the literature. I remember at the 7th World Literature Conference, Joseph rubbing me down and telling me I could write. I couldn't write, I couldn't read when I got to Narcotics Anonymous. And all of a sudden, I got this man rubbing me down and telling me that I could write. And he sat me at a table and said, work on this IP. I remember Bo was on the phone. He had a secretary typing, and he was taking a story from Japan. It was just amazing time in Ivy Land, Pennsylvania, Bucks County, in a farmhouse where Pete, George, and Al lived. And we had a literature conference there, and it was an amazing time. People were playing guitars, singing, and Joseph, I don't know, and maybe Bo can confirm this sometime, did he ever write anything? Because it's all I saw him was serving people, rubbing them down, getting them coffee, getting them food, and encouragement. He encouraged me so much that I got involved in helping addicts. And what he kept focused on me was the home group. The home group. The home group is the vehicle. The most important vehicle that we can do is participate in a home group. Develop a group that carries the message. Keep focused on what we're doing. Get people involved. And Joseph and Greg and people like Bo encourage people to get involved. And I think that's the exciting thing. When you study about the basic text and you talk with the people that were at Lincoln, one of my past sponsors, Greg had sponsored at one time because Greg had passed on, and then I got Jim Nichols. Jim passed also, but Jim was the guy they talk about at the Lincoln conference where he got the bikers together and they went and sold their blood for stamps and stuff. And when you get and meet these people and talk with these people and you experience them, the first time I met Jim Nichols was in Miami. And I met these people from out in Nebraska, Missouri, Iowa, places like that there. And we sat up all night. I didn't sleep. When I went to these places, I didn't sleep. The most amazing thing about the World Convention in Miami is when I got there, I got there in 17 and a half 17 and a half hours from Allentown, Pennsylvania. I got 2 speeding tickets. One in Georgia for doing 95 on 95. Tried to pay the cop off. He got a little upset at me. Trying to tell him, well, the speed limit said 95. He said, and he got a little upset at me because he thought, I said, let me just pay the ticket. And then he got mad. He said, I had to come back to Georgia to court. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't come back to Georgia. I got warrants in Georgia from my addiction. Okay, I can't come back here. So I went home and got a lawyer and told him, take care of this for me. How much money you need, take care of it. I'm not going back to Georgia. And then I got nailed for doing 105 on the turnpike in Florida. Then the cop told me, I told him where I was going. I was all excited. He said, well, here's a nice ticket, but drive safely. I got to the World Convention, and I met Carmelita and Brother Rick. And I surrendered cigarettes. Remember that real good. I surrendered cigarettes that weekend. Before I went there, God spoke to me, and I worked in the steel mill, pouring steel, and he talked to me, and I had a conscience, and I stopped smoking. Threw all my cigarettes away, my pipe tobacco, my cigars, threw them all in the damn heat of steel and watched them go poof, and that was the end of it. And then I get there, and Carmelita and Brother Rick are up on these 8-foot round tables jumping up and down in a cloud of smoke, because everyone smoked in the rooms then. And I was just like having a spiritual awakening. I mean, I was excited. And that convention really helped me out because the literature people were there. I was there. The one morning we're sitting there up in the one window looking out, and the dolphins or the porpoises were swimming. I'm sitting there with Roger, who was on the literature committee, Joseph, and a few other people in the literature committee, and we're sitting there talking about, recovery, writing the book, and what's going to happen, okay? And yeah, it was just an exciting time, and that excitement from what they were doing grew in my area. It helped my area grow. I got people involved because of that excitement. I got other people involved and told them about this miracle that's happening. And I remember getting this gray book at the Second East Coast, and I slammed it on my table. I threw all the AA literature in the garbage can and told them, we have a book. And this was our book. And I told them, we are Narcotics Anonymous. This is Narcotics Anonymous, and we are NA now. We are no longer this thing that we're calling NA. That's you reading the AA big book, the 12 and 12, and all the. I threw it all in the garbage can, and then I turned around and says, we got a choice. 3 choices I gave them. One choice was they can leave. The third choice is they can stay and be NA, or the third choice is we can go outside and fight, which I prefer because I was physically violent. So they all left, and it left my wife, who was my girlfriend then, just getting married to her, and a newcomer. That was it. We went from about 50 people to 3, just like that. But we were NA after that. And then we start building Narcotics Anonymous. We actually start the grow, and from that point, from the Second East Coast to that September, the World Convention, we actually created an area. And I was elected chairperson when I was down at the World Convention. We actually developed an area service body from that literature movement, from them helping us get the group started, from people supporting us. We had an ad-a-thon. First ad-a-thon, Pete and them came up from Bucks County, supported us. We had another ad-a-thon, and we had over 200 some people there. A bunch of people from Pittsburgh supported us. Back there, where they said people traveled 200 miles to support another group, we did. I would drive if you told me you needed help down in Virginia Beach, I go down there. If you told me you needed help in Norfolk, I was there. You needed help in Pittsburgh, I go out. Down in West Virginia, up to Massachusetts, okay? It didn't matter. We traveled. We traveled to support one another and help one another grow. Because that was the exciting time about our history, was the growth and the people that touched our lives. When you had people like Joseph, Greg, Bo, you had Jim out in Ohio, and Jimmy Kinnon I was on the phone with him every night. I had people that I could tap into to help me through this stuff. And we developed an area service body in Allentown, Pennsylvania, that become the Little Apple area, and I chaired it for the first 3 years. I chaired the Fourth East Coast Convention. You know who helped me do that? People I met along the road at the Second East Coast. I met Tom the Red and Little Linda from Georgia. They helped me put the bid together. They stayed up at my house for 2 weeks and helped me negotiate a contract with Lehigh University to get the bid put together to go to the Third East Coast and Robert Morris College out in Pittsburgh to put the bid on. They helped me, and they stayed there with me. We didn't know a thing. I mean, I got hung up on one thing. I would not even talk about what buildings, what we're going to pay or anything till they gave me the coffee. The guy was so upset at me. He says, "What the heck is wrong?" I said, "We need coffee, lots of it. That's all I know. Are you going to supply the coffee for free?" And he says, "Here, signed it in." He said, "It's in the contract already. Now let's talk about the rest." And then we negotiated buildings, we negotiated food, we negotiated, where we're going to have the main meeting at the arena, and we got it all established, and we put a bid in, and they gave us the Fourth East Coast. In the meantime, we were part of the Mid-Atlantic back then. In the meantime, because you remember, that was 1981, there was the Mid-Atlantic. By the time we had the Fourth East Coast, the Chesapeake Potomac formed, the Philadelphia region formed, the New York City region formed, the Greater New York region formed. New York was putting on the 13th World Convention at the Vista Hotel back then at the World Trade Centers. And there was a lot of excitement. People come and they spent time in their homes. And we spent time in your homes. We got to know you by spending time in your homes. I mean, it wasn't just, we see you at meetings. No, we spend time together. We develop friendships. We develop a bond, and we talked about how do we do service. When she's asking, about the area and why the areas are struggling, is because they're not serving the groups. The groups should direct areas. And that's the way it was. Groups directed the area. When Bo talked about we're about communication, we're about information. We provide information. It's all we do at the service level. We provide information. We give the information back to the groups and give them all the information, and then trust the group conscience to make the decisions for us. Let them direct us. And you'll have an overflow of spirit when you do that. An overflow of spirit. I still remember when Terry R. and Tony Daddio, John Curley from Staten Island used to come to my house and break bread with me. Terry used to come down with Betsy, to my house and break bread with me at my house. People spent time together. And I go up to, what's that club in Manhattan? I used to go do PI workshops in that club there, down in the Village. We did things together. I go to Massachusetts, do a PI workshop for a local area just starting up. And talk to them about how to get public information off the ground. Share with them the information that I was given and pass it on. We pass it on. We give that information on and let them develop through a grassroots movement. I mean, when Pete and them, when the Chesapeake Potomac formed and Billy Z was part of the Mid-Atlantic, they stayed with me and they helped me develop the Fourth East Coast. They also were part of a newsletter we called the Freedom Connection back then, and they would put it together in DC, Maryland there, and ship it back up. It was responsible to the Mid-Atlantic groups, but they stayed on and we put that newsletter together. They didn't want to leave. They want to be part of it. And they learned that stuff through the literature movement. They learned it through the original NA Way back then when Jim was the chairperson of the original NA Way literature, magazine. We actually produce the new old NA Way now. Same way we do it. We do it through addicts writing articles, and then we put them out there. And we put this on nahelp.org. We put 6 of them out a year, but it's written by addicts for addicts. And Jim got this restarted, this magazine, and we put it out every other month right now. Every now and then we might put 8 out a year because we put at least 2 special editions out every year. And but we do stuff like that there because we were taught how to do that back then. Bo was part of the Rainbow Connection, and you can still get the old Rainbow Connections. There's so much stuff in the Rainbow Connections, it's unbelievable, of the information and the covers that Bo used to. He used to screen print covers for the magazine and the original NA Way. He used to screen print the covers for it. And they put them newsletters together. I mean, if you read about writing of the basic text, you'll see that you'll see letters out there from Bo to the from the Atlanta Literature Committee to the Wichita Literature Committee, with people back and forth. And Bo would be answering everyone. You see pictures of the Third World Literature Conference where Bo and Page, and when they brought in the three trunks, you'll see Bo and Roy Drum, who's dead now, at the three trunks of stuff that they carried, of all the input. They kept every piece. It didn't matter if it was on a napkin. They kept that stuff, and it was precious. That you could actually see what they were doing. You can see the cut and paste process they used when you study we have all that stuff, okay, still in files, and it's amazing stuff when you get involved in that there, and there was nothing that we couldn't do as groups. There was nothing we couldn't do in service to carry this message. Things are based around the literature movement. The Mid-Atlantic was a very large region, and then they created the Southeast Forum later, with Georgia and Memphis and Florida. They created that there where they go to Memphis, and so much stuff was going on back then, so much excitement, and it seemed everyone had to end up at the World Service Conference that did anything in service back then, and I think that was, the excitement of the NA has to get revived. You have to carry the message, but you got to get people involved. You cannot just sit by idly and not have people involved. You have to encouragement. It takes encouragement. It takes one-on-one contact with people. It takes rubbing them down, letting them know that they're important. Every addict's important. Bo shared that. Every addict matters. And he says that came from the hippie movement. I don't know. I was a hippie at one time. I hated it. I love being a biker instead, okay? I love the brotherhood of being a biker. But when I got to NA, it was like a revolution for me. This was like a revolution. And the revolution was an excitement, an adrenaline level that inspired me that I could do something different, that I wasn't stupid. I was just a victim of a victim throughout my life. I never had anyone to encourage me till I got here. By getting here, I got a lot of hope, a lot of faith that you gave me hope, you gave me faith, you gave me the ability to surrender my life through the steps. And through that, I gave back. And through that, I ended up being involved with all this stuff. And, everyone says, where did it go wrong? You always hear, where did it go wrong? Why are we at where we're at today? What's the solution? Why are we at where we're at is because people don't listen. Expediency, money, property, prestige. We talk about it all the time. I mean, if you read stuff that Grateful Dave wrote about, it's the same thing people are saying today, but this was in 1990 he wrote this. This is in 1990, and Dave is writing. It says there are some very disturbing things going on with the service in general and specify world service. That's 1990. Where are we at today? 2020? Talking 30 years later. But if you read his writings, it's the same stuff. We were struggling with it through the 80s. The minute we got, I think when the most impacted conference happened that changed, I believe changed everything. Well, yes, it changed when they didn't give us our basic text as we put out. All right? There's all kind of stories about the basic text, but if you study the documents and you study Chuck Skinner's interviews, you'll see that the Board of Trustees made a decision, and that's before Bo got on the board, made a decision to change the 4th and 9th. People blame Jimmy. Yes, Jimmy was part of the four guys meeting in the office, but they demanded it be sent to the trustees, and the trustees made that decision, and they changed our book. And then everyone got angry. What happens with angry? We wanted everyone gone. Simple. But what replaced it? Think about what replaced it. And you'll see the names. You can study the book. You can study Bob Stone's book. It's in there. The names are there. Back then, any trusted servant that got on world service, their full names were there. Bo Sewell is in there. You'll see Bob Raymar. You'll see Stu Tordeman. You'll see, George Hollihan. You'll see names. Jim Miller. When you got the world service, you didn't have anonymity at that level. That's why I just tell people, my name's Bill Allen. Yeah, who cares? It's what you do with it that matters. I have the right to tell you what my name is. All right? But at that level, everybody knew your name. And they put it in print. If you were involved, your name got in print somewhere. Everyone says, where'd Anthony Evanson come from? I'll tell you where he came from. He came from Washington, D.C., 1985. He was the treasurer on the World Convention. You read Bob Stone's book, he'll tell you where Anthony would not give the money up to the World Services from the World Convention. And you'll see Bob Stone talks about him flying in there, and you'll see that Bob Raymar flew in there, and then you'll see Anthony leaving and becoming the head of the World Convention Corporation. You'll see that. And he gave the $80,000 checkup. I mean, that's in Bob Stone's book. I'm not telling you anything that's not factual. You want to know where he came from? Becky Myers. She's the assistant director. If you look through the timelines and you check the timelines, she came to the conference in '84 just like I did. All right, I was involved with the World Services before that, but '84 that World Service Conference, the most impacted conference I've ever attended. And what happened at that conference? First, they removed the 4th step guide. All right? They did that without being in the conference agendas. Read the conference agendas. They're out there. You can get them yet. Read the conference agenda, read the minutes, and see what happened at the conference versus what was in the agenda. You'll see they got rid of that in new business. You'll see that where they said about the 4th and 9th tradition again. You want to know how it got changed from the 2nd to the 3rd. You'll see that they brought that up in new business, and then they created a vehicle, because there was no vehicle in the conference agenda or conference procedures for them to even vote on that change. So they sent it out to the fellowship for 60 days instead. They made that decision in new business. It was not in the conference agenda. We were led to believe you put it in the conference agenda, and it had to go out to the fellowship for a certain part of time, and then it'd be voted on at the conference in old business. But this wasn't even in old business. It came on the conference floor by what? A letter from Nebraska. That's what the trustee said. It come from one letter from one group. How does one group get right on the conference floor without going through their area and their region and through the agenda? How do they get to have a voice from the conference floor? Because the trustees make a decision that we're going to put this on the conference floor. And why? Because they wanted to change the 4th and 9th again. And then we're going to create a vehicle. The conference creates a vehicle on how to supervent the process we were using. And then they wonder why people get upset and don't trust. They could have brought it back the following year and said, let's get it out to the fellowship, let's talk about it again. But no, we had to get this done. And then they say, you ask them, where's the vote at? We'd like to see it. Well, somehow it got lost for 10 years, George said. All right? Got lost. So now you don't see it at all, but they want us to believe that the fellowship voted. And I know Mid-Atlantic didn't vote, because how do I know? I was the RSR. We didn't vote at all. Why are we counted in the quorum? You count the regions, you count the trustees. Each trustee had a vote. Each chairperson had a vote, and the board of directors had one vote. The votes don't add up. I know other regions that did not vote. I know letters that were sent in protesting the whole process. We weren't heard. The fellowship's not heard. What happens when the fellowship, let's get back to her. When the fellowship's not heard, the fellowship walks away. That's when my friend Pete basically went and helped form Narcotics Anonymous. Got driven out of Philadelphia area and helped form Narcotics Anonymous. I love that man, and I'm so happy he's back with us. But you think about stuff like that and the pain we cause by our actions. Is the pain worth the outcome? I say no. Time is of all essence for us. If we're not attaching our ego and our personalities, it shouldn't matter how long it takes. Nothing should matter on time. The only thing that should matter, are we carrying the message to the addict? What vehicles do we need to carry the message? What support do we need? Let's bind together as groups and put it together and get the message out there. It should be our only concern. Can we write? Of course we can write. Does it matter if our English is a little distorted because it sounds like addicts? Well, what are we? We're addicts. Okay? That's why the Great Book, I love it the most. And now we got this here book. A lot of people didn't see it, but it's a great book, reflection book. All right? We wrote it. It's not approved yet. It's input and review piece. It's going to go through a literature conference probably in September, in New Jersey. We're going to have a literature conference, a participatory conference. We have a lot of IPs. If you go on nahelp.org, you'll see all these IPs we got out for input review. You can get involved in the process. We're doing it the old way. We didn't figure out we're going to do it by screens or what for cut and paste, or we're just going to do the old way of cutting and pasting again. But we're writing. This here, we started this here, and Bo was down when we were first working on this here down in Florida. And we actually got a whole book of it every day of the year put together so far. Plus, we have another book of it, basically, of input. And that's written by addicts for addicts through groups. We've collected it. And we collected it all. People are requesting the information. People are emailing this stuff, these daily Gray Book reflections every day around the world. People are reading it. Where's it coming from? It's coming from addicts. That's all that matters. It's coming from addicts. It's your literature. It's important. But the shutdown, if you start looking at timelines, the effects of what happened through the 80s, I think the 80s affected us more than anything. The 80s, 1984, when I say that 84 conference is when they created the Select Committee. The Select Committee is the committee that was working on the guide to service. Why was our guide a temporary guide? A temporary guide to service we had, the gray version at that point. That was after the green form that should have been introduced on the conference floor as the full one, but they voted on the first half and not the second half. You look at these things and you look at each conference and you'll see what happened, how it happened, and was your voice being heard. And you'll always see there's a battle there of a vote of confidence at that conference and a group conscience. And when the group conscience conflicted with the vote of confidence were not. If I rub you down and tell you how important you are, Keith K., you're important, brother. We need you. Can you get me your regional vote? Because, and I know you can. All right? You can have any position on World Service, and that's how I was approached by other people's sponsees. You can have any position you want at World Service, as long as you can get me the Mid-Atlantic vote. But I never got the Mid-Atlantic vote because the groups made the decision. I carried the conscience there. Some reason I got stuck there. It's 4 years as an RSR. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. I guess because Joseph said never say no. And I ended up being there, and I ended up being public information vice chair for 2 years. And but if the groups weren't saying to do it, we didn't do it. That's simple facts. And you'll see the politicking. When you see an amendment to the amendment to the amendment, what was the original motion? Now, what's the amendment to the amendment to the amendment? Have you ever heard it? Did you make a decision on it? And then they tell you, we got to get this done fast because addicts are going to die if we don't take care of it. It's called controlled manipulation. It's called what Bo was talking about, a service structure that serves groups versus a top-heavy corporate structure. The transformation from trying to bring out a service structure that's inverted where the membership is your decision-making process. The membership is the ownership of your literature that you wrote. The groups should be its trustees of that literature, should protect it. All right? And the area should serve those groups. And the groups should make all decisions at that area level. And I guarantee you, whatever the groups want done, the money will be there. Guarantee it. Greg always said, if it's not spiritual, it won't happen. If it's spiritual, it's going to be there. So think about that. If it's spiritual, the money will flow. Our group never had a problem with money in its basket. We don't have that problem at our home group. The money's always there. You know why? Because we know where the money's going. We know that we're making decisions on what we're spending it on. We know that our money is accountable for. Once it leaves and we're going to be part of a structure, are we going to direct that structure? If we're not directing it, we're not sending money to it. We're not going to be part of it. That's our decision that we made. But we ended up with the changing of the book. The timeline of the book I want to go over. First edition was supposed to be the approval form. It wasn't the approval. A lot of people like to say, I studied the second edition. Well, I want you to go through the second edition and go through the approval form line by line and see the actual changes that are from the approval form to the second edition that you didn't make decisions on. Even the second edition is not the book you approved. Why do I say? Because we were so caught up in the 4th and 9th, we never line by line it to make sure it was the approval form. I got to take responsibility here. We didn't do that. We checked. We went right in there, and first we had to tell them, wait a minute, and then you got the pasties in there because they forgot to change it. Then they put pasties on it. Then the next run, they come out with the original 4th and 9th in it again. But if you go through the book, I guarantee you're going to find changes throughout that book that are not the approval form. The only true book is the approval form. That was written by addicts, for addicts, approved by addicts. I mean, that's the truth. Why do I accept the 3rd edition revised? I may not like the process we used, okay, for this book. I may not like some of the changes that the Board of Trustees made, but we voted on them changes to change the little white book. The fellowship voted 72-0 to change the little white book changes that the Board of Trustees did. I may not have agreed on how it was done, but we went through with it, and the Mid-Atlantic region, every group voted for them changes. And at that conference, it was a 72-0 to change the first part of the little white book. And then there was a motion to, and no, it was not a total unanimous vote of 100%, but they had 2/3 of the vote to create the 3rd edition revised. So I accept this is our book because we had a chance. We chose not to take that chance. So I choose this, that this is the book I read as my basic text, and I study the gray book. All right? And because we made that decision as a fellowship. The trustees made the changes. We allowed them to do that without objecting. Yes, the conference decision for the trustees to do that. It didn't go to the groups, but we allowed it to continue. And then we voted on the changes when they put it in the conference agenda. So we as the groups made that decision to do that. Was there controversy around it? Yes. And what was the controversy around stories? And we can't change someone's personal story without permission. That's how simple it is. And the last time I saw Jimmy Kinnon was at that conference. Jimmy come in the back, and a man named Douglas come up, tapped me on the shoulder and said, there's someone in the back that wants to see you, Bill. And it was my grand sponsor, Jimmy. And I went back there, and a bunch of Jimmy's friends surrounded him, and I walked in, and he just gave me a hug, and he loved me. And, Jimmy, that died early July that year, 85. And he signed my book, my red book, Alive and Well in 85, Jimmy Kinnon. But it was so special that Jimmy came to visit me. He didn't come to the conference to participate with other people. Douglas told him about me, and he remembered being on the boat where we went to see the Statue of Liberty together, and the island and the island where he entered the United States from Ireland. And I was on the boat in 83 with him when we were up at the Vista Hotel. We took the ferry over to the Statue of Liberty and to Ellis Island together. And I got to spend time with him on that boat, and we got to spend time in 85 in the back of the conference together. That was a special moment. It works how and why 85 I say the it's probably the 85 blue version of It Works How and Why is probably the closest to what the membership wrote. After that, they closed the literature committee totally down. The trustees start working on the traditions. People start saying, let the trustees have that part. The literature committee shut down. The literature ex-chairperson was hired into the office, Jenny Swanson. All right. In '84, they did a sexual martyrs on the conference floor also that year. Forgot it when they removed our 4-step inventory guide without, they didn't say, it wasn't that they disapproved it, they said it's no longer in print. And that's how they get rid of our 4-step inventory guide, without a group conscience on it. That's why we print it and we use it, been using it ever since, the original 4-step inventory guide that Greg wrote on the bus. Not in the bus, he wrote Triangle of Self-Obsession. But he wrote the 4-step inventory guide also, okay? That 4-step inventory guide saved my life, because it had me deal with everything that's in it. The original 4-step inventory guide had the animal sex in it, the homosexuality, the bestiality, the interracial sex, had all that stuff in it. Guess what? Everything I had to write on. Why? Why did I have to write? Because of where I was raised, what culture I was brought up in, what I was told, what to do, not to do, conflicted with my own sexuality. I had to write about all these things. Had abortion in there. I had to write about it. Where did I formulate these opinions from? Where did I formulate myself from? Do I know who I am? I wrote about everything on there. It saved my life and other people's lives, where I didn't have to lash out at people because of who they were or what I perceived they were. But that was removed in '84. '85, that's when we dealt with the basic text and created the 3rd edition revised. And that's where they hired the writer then for It Works How and Why after that, $100,000 for that. That was a little white one that came out. And then as you go through the literature, you'll start seeing, then they also made the motion that wasn't in the agenda. The literature committee made the motion to edit our basic text again. We just accepted the 3rd edition, but now we're going to edit it again, okay? Now we're going to edit the book, and that's where the 4th edition came. That came out in October of '87. Hazleton they funded that to buy the stockpile so the World Service could print the 4th edition. And they never came and never asked the fellowship to go through it. And then in Charlotte at the quarterly conference, all hell went off. And Bo was a trustee. He was there when we came down there. Everyone came there, and we were all upset. How could you do this to our basic text? And then they created a 5th edition on the conference floor. That edition is not our basic text either. That was created on the conference floor, and they got up and said, "Oh, we mistakenly missed 25 lines. We're going to insert 25 lines back into the book." Okay, and they created the 5th edition on the conference floor. The only motion they could adhere to that was in the agenda was return our 3rd edition revised to us. The only motion there. And at that point, we were so upset. In that fall of '87, we actually created the baby blue in my basement. We took 2 of my 3rd edition revised, Grateful Dave, myself, and a guy named Gene Richards, who's dead, went in my basement, and Dave cut them out with an X-Acto knife. He cut my book out of the cover. All right, we left the stories in, okay? One of them, our friend in Texas Travis has one of them, where Dave signed it. Okay, the other one got destroyed when an avalanche hit my house here. Got totally destroyed with water when the snow melted. But this room here was packed shut up. That I'm in was packed to the ceiling, 9-foot ceilings full of snow. All right, it melted down through my basement and destroyed a lot of my archives. But Dave took the one and I kept the other one. And we went down to Search Beatty's print shop and we printed a plain print wrapper, we called it. And underneath, we had to cover the basic text inside, and we had a plain pink wrapper cover on it. And in our area, we start using that plain pink wrapper. And then we gave the conference another opportunity in '89. We gave them one more opportunity to return our book to us, and they didn't. They refused to adhere to the motions. And then we actually said, that's it, we're printing the book. Dave and Lou, Big Lou, anyone that's seen the video of Big Lou on the internet, who got called out in Oregon at the World Convention from the speaker, Bob Berg, and humiliated the man. All right. They flew back from the World Service Conference to my house, and we went to the home group, and we decided that's it. We're printing the book. And then we went over what they brought up about the idea of putting the 4th and 9th back in this book. And we said, well, we'll make a decision through group conscience, but we're printing the book. We went to Sir Speedy, printed some books. And then Dave said he can get them cheaper. So we said, why don't you go find out what the price can be? You know our price. Lou went to Miami to check on prices. And then Dave found the cheapest price in West Virginia. And we didn't know it back then that he was actually going down with newcomers. He'd go in a print shop, and they would actually print it, and then they would cut it, and the next day they'd come and put it together. The printer let them use the shop there. And I got what they call an uncut version, and it's actually 4 sheets. Then they'd have to cut it and put it in the book the next day and put the book together. I have an uncut version in my archives. But they've got the best price, so it was his group, our home group here, Historical Respect and Recovery First Group, and Lou's home group down in South Miami, that we start putting the book out. And we start getting 3,000 at a clip. People put up money. Dave would go down there, print them, bring them back. Our group would get our supply. He'd get his supply, and then Lou would get his supply, and then they take them, and Dave would take them to conventions and get rid of them at $1 a book. And that's what basically was costing to do them, with the travel, everything to West Virginia, print the book, bring the book, going to conventions, getting rid of them. And they go up and down the East Coast when we talk about the book. And then holy hell broke out. Then the Board of Trustees start meeting in the Board of Directors, and they start talking about, and they start choosing who they're going to take to court. And they chose Dave. And the reason they chose Dave is they knew Big Lou at that point was a millionaire. They knew I was a continuous fighter that I wouldn't give up, and I had a good enough job I could support myself and could fight a court case. Dave was dying of the AIDS virus that we didn't know. He didn't have money. He was like a pauper. So they chose Dave, and they sued Dave in federal court. And we ended up in federal court in Philadelphia in 1991 over it. And I stayed with Dave the whole time. I helped him plan the case out. He defended himself. I was able to sit aside of him. The judge gave me permission to sit aside of him. The most spiritual event I've ever been outside of Narcotics Anonymous in the courthouse. And Bo can attribute to this. When that judge got out of his seat, out of his high perch, and came down and served us water while we sat there in the defendant's stand. And he poured water into our glasses for us. I never met a judge like that, because I'm used to going to the judge and him sending me to jail. And all of a sudden I'm seeing a judge and he's serving us. And he had an understanding of us more than we had of ourselves. He said, and he told us, you guys need to come to agreement. Neither side's going to like the decision I have to make. Now, I talked about this earlier about having to correct the court case, and what the decision was a negotiation. He wanted us to negotiate. He wanted us to come together. He knew we should be making this decision. The fellowship should make the decision, not him. So he chose to allow us to come to an agreement, and Dave and us, we put the agreement together. We did the same thing, cut and paste, put it back together, got it together the way we wanted it. And the World Service Office agreed to that there, and they were supposed to present a series of motions to the conference. The series of motions was never heard. The series of motions that I'm talking about is the fellowship was supposed to make it. Every group was supposed to get this book. They were all supposed to get the changes from every text. and they're supposed to get this book, and the groups are supposed to make a decision if they wanted this book or not. They didn't get to make that decision. Groups didn't get to make that decision. You can look at the conference agenda. You can see when they filed the contempt, they were trying to force the FIPT through that I was talking earlier with and talked and reflected to Bo. We were all working on the FIPT. I got the minutes of everything that we did with them, and then they dissolved the committee. They said they didn't have money to continue the committee. They dissolved our input is what they did. And they wrote their own FIPT. They filed a contempt, and then Dave died in the middle of the contempt. And then I tried to substitute myself to defend it. Jim tried to substitute himself to defend it. And there were a few others that said, hey, we'll step up. And the judge did not allow us. He said he was not going to make law from the bench. He would not do that. He said there's never been a substitution of a defendant in a civil matter like that. So the case ended up just dropping because Dave had passed. And in 1993, they approved their FIPT. Our group already withdrew from the service structure. We already sent a letter to the Attorney General that whatever they do with the FIPT does not govern our group. And we explained about the traditions, and the only thing that governs our group is the 12 traditions of Narcotics Anonymous, and this is our basic text. And the fellowship owns what literature that we wrote by us, for us, is ours. And that's where the whole conflict comes in. What's labor of love that Bo testified on that stand was, and I believe that would stand up. I don't believe they could ever take the book from you. I believe any group has the right to print it. No, it's not in the court agreement, but what's in the court agreement that we were supposed to work together, and they dissolved that. That's where they're in contempt. They pushed an FIPT down the fellowship's throat without our input. They chose to dissolve our input, just like they did with Greg's input, just like they did with Just for Today book, just like they did with any fellowship literature that we submitted. They get rid of it, and they write, because it had to be a right for hire. And remember that a right for hire is ownership. When you're writing by addicts for addicts or labor of love, we're not making money. It's written out of our love, and we can set the precedent in the copyright that it's a labor of love, not a right for hire. It's our literature. You own it. Every group owns the basic text. Every member owns. And who is the beneficiary is every addict. Every suffering addict is the beneficiary, not yet even born. They're the beneficiary of our works. And that's the important part when you study history, is you got to look at the facts, what's in there, what happened, how it happened, and let's remove the personalities and let's look at the facts and how we're going to present it. And if we're not presenting that, how are groups supposed to have all the information? And I know you're in challenges today. Everybody's up in arms. You got people wanting to sue the World Service Office over the FIPT. I think it's a losing matter. I really do. I think that if they sued us, we'd win that in Philadelphia federal court again. I think we'd win it this time outright. But they'd have to come after us. I don't believe suing them in a California state law court is beneficiary for the fellowship at large. I think it's just going to get a lot of more anger. I think it's going to divide us more, and then we're going to go through more separation. Separating is not good. We need to be together, all of us. I don't care what side you're on. We need to be together. We need to work together. We need to get group conscience and follow and participate again. We need to help one another. She's in New York. She's 90 minutes from my house. 90 minutes. I don't know what part of New York she's in, though, but I can get to Manhattan in 90 minutes from my house. I was up in the Bronx for my buddy Roberto's funeral. I was there in 70 minutes. All right? I live that close to the city. There's no reason after this virus, and the virus is real, I had it, okay? I'll let you know it is real. It laid me up for like 15 days, okay? I'm over it now, but it hit me. I sat in this couch for 15 days. I sat right where I'm sitting on the internet. Talking with one another is what the key is. How do we get the point A ship and to love one another back to life again? I know Bo was in Russia. I was in Russia, okay? I know them people are excited over there. How do we help them? I know I go to the EFC every year since September this year, the European Fellowship Service Conference. It's the most beautiful conference in the world. It's where the groups come together and the groups make decisions and the groups have a lot of fun over the weekend, 4 days. And I go there every year. You know, sir, you know, we've been there, you know, it's like exciting. We're going on our 5th Fellowship Service Conference over there. I go to the Fellowship Service Conference every year. It's our 15th this year. Doesn't matter. The groups come, the groups have a great time together. They eat together, they make their decisions, and we leave there with an excitement. You know, and it's a lot of fun. You know, and how groups communicate is the important part. How are we going to communicate again? How are we going to get the information out? My service has been to you. I trust you. I trust every group, if they have all the information, that they can make the right decisions if they're given the information. There's no rush for it either. It doesn't matter how long it takes to create something. How long? I don't care if it takes us. You know, I don't care if this book ever gets approved. This Great Book Reflections. I don't care that it ever gets approved. Guess what? It's in the participation that we write it. It's the encouragement. People read it. They see. They help write that. It excites them. And they're getting this all around the world, the reflections. People are telling me, they're sending me reflections now. And I'm like, some girl from Oklahoma asked me if I'll send her one. So I'm going to make sure that a book like that ends up in a literature box going to Kansas, and she has an Oklahoma, she got an Oklahoma number though. She's going to end up with 40 of these great books are going, these great books, which are a nice book, okay? They're a soft cover text. Okay, you know, I'm shipping 40 of these out for $90 out there. They're gorgeous, you know, text here. They're printed really good by a book company, you know, overseas, and they go out for $2 1/4 a book, and it's just like there's not a penny made on them. You know, and they're gorgeous. Shipping 40 of these, and I'm gonna throw one of them in the box so that girl can get it. Okay, you know, she said, you know, whatever it costs you. I said, I'll find out what it cost me to print, and she can send me a donation for the group. You know, what it's going to come down to, you know, I told her I'll pay for the extra shipping for it. You know, it's no big essence, okay? I give them out everyone's birthday up here that I go to. I'll print one up and take it to them. Give it to them as a birthday present, and give them some other stuff. I give them old literature. I print up stuff. Give them the magazines, okay? I'll print every magazine we have and throw it in the bag. When someone gets 30 years, they get all them magazines, or 20 years. You know, when they hit double digits, they get a bigger bag, okay? A lot more stuff from me. You know, I can't take it with me, okay? I'm not going to die a rich man. I'm going to die a happy man. I'm going to die spiritually fit, I hope. I hope one day I'm at the big meet in the sky with Greg and Joseph and Jimmy and whoever else ends up there, Jim Nichols. My past sponsor, Gino, okay, from Texas. You know, I got to be with some great people along the road, and I'm not an old timer. I'm not your dinosaur. I'm alive and well, okay. I'm just like you. I'm an addict seeking how to get through my next day. My grandson is going to he's 4 years old, having his 3rd open heart surgery in 4 years. Died at a week old. They brought him back to life. He's back in for another open heart surgery on the 8th. So if you pray for little Gabriel, I'd appreciate it, okay? He's my grandson. And I enjoy just being with him. I enjoy being with my little granddaughter, Genevieve, who her first 3 years of her life, she was in critical condition. This is what I serve for, is to help others. And my own family, I got to help also, okay? I become a productive member of society because of NA. NA is the most important thing we can carry this message around the world. You know, and I'm excited. You know, the history is so important that we know it so we don't repeat it over and over again. You know, and it's that important for us. Don't repeat it over and over again. Yeah, and I'm here. Want to ask me any questions? I spoke about an R. That's what they said. I got an R, okay? So I could speak for another R, you know, on this stuff because it's that exciting. You know, but I'm not going to go through blow by blow. They're just important areas I covered, okay? And I want to thank you. And I just want you to know, do some research on my friend Grateful Dave Moorhead. He's a beautiful spirit, okay? And he spent that time in a court case, got abandoned by most of the people in the fellowship, and he sent me his archives before he died. He trusted me that much. He gave me his archives, and it was just a beautiful time to have spent with a man like him and Big Lou, who died. And I want everyone to understand Lou was going to get clean again. He called me up the night he died and said he was going to get a plane ticket, but he had to do one more shot. That one more shot killed him. Because he said he wanted to be able to get to Allentown so I could detox him. His whole intent was to get clean, but he had to do a shot so he'd get on the plane and come here without withdrawing on the plane. Touched my heart. But Lou Pompom was a great man, a great spirit, and he helped us out a whole lot. But you got to remember, when you got kicked like he did from a World Conference and from the World Convention podium, pointed out and said what type of dirtball he really was and stuff. And he had a guy lying from the table and tried to say about the book and stuff and lied, okay, how that man changed group conscience. That man didn't change group conscience at all. We fulfilled the group conscience because the fourth and fifth were not our conscience. This was. And to kick him in the balls and kick him in the head like they did and humiliate him, he couldn't take the pressure. I'm not gonna be all upset that the man went back out and used over it, but he was coming back. If you went through what we went through back then, I got physically beat on. I was told I was not a Narcotics Anonymous member. I got letters sent to our churches to try to get us thrown out from World Service Office. They said I was not an NA member, and that came right from George Hollahan, the assistant director of the office. It was not a pretty time in NA. But I have no resentments. I have no anger. I only got love for the fellowship. And I know it was a war between, like Bo talked about, corporate NA versus a spiritual fellowship. The corporation will not win in the end. I believe spirituality will, but we got to educate one another and give each person the tools to be equipped, because you will be attacked if you decide that you're not going to send money. You will be attacked if you decide you're going to write literature and approve it in your groups. You will be attacked if you put this book out. You will be attacked if you're talking about the Gray Book. But that's all it is. It's meaningless. They can't do anything about it. If they attack you, tell them to take Bill Allen to court because he prints them, okay? Use my name personally. All right? Get my email and use it. Tell them I got the book from this man, his home group. I got broad shoulders, brothers and sisters. Carry the message of hope and promise of freedom from active addiction. No addict need die anywhere in the world. That's our dream. That's a dream I walked into. That's a dream I have today. And that's a dream every one of us are responsible for. As Jimmy said, we are responsible for this message, nobody else. Don't allow them to change our message of total abstinence, because that's the truth right now. They're after total abstinence. When she said about the rehabilitation world, yes, there's a lot of people involved in world service that got vested interest in the rehabilitation world. We don't serve the rehabilitation world. We serve the addict who still suffers. No addict need die tonight in the horrors of addiction because we didn't get the message out there. It's our responsibility. Thank you for allowing me to share.